Let's now fill each of the card elements with the correct data for each of the tours. So just as a quick recap, in the last video, we started by creating this main element and then inside a div container element. Then inside of that container, we want one of these card elements for each of the tours that comes in the array that we pass into this template. And for that, we use a pug array that works just like this. So with this each keyword here. And the result of doing that looked like this, all right? And so what we're going to do now is to basically fill each of these cards here with the actual data. And let's start here with the tour name. So remember how we put the value of a variable inside of one element? Well, we use equal, and then in this case, tour, so the name of the variable in the current loop iteration, right? And so that's a tour document, and then dot name. Remember? So let's check that out in Compass very quick. So here we have our tours, and so this is all of the data that we're going to need now. Okay, and starting with the name here. Okay, and so if we now reload our page, that should actually be reflected in here. And so this is where the magic starts, and it worked. And so this is the first time that we really see the data from the database being actually rendered on the website. So here we have the tour name for each of the tours, and again, that is now coming right out of our database. So fantastic, that's really cool. And so let's now actually continue building this card. So here about the image now, let's also put the alternative text to the tour name. Now we cannot simply put tour.name here because we're inside of a string, and so that doesn't work. Now at the same time, if we do it like this, it's also not going to be working because here this alt actually expects a string. Okay, so we need some quotes here around this variable. And so the easiest way of doing that is to actually use ES6 template strings. Okay, so just like this. And again, that's because this actually here expects a string to become in. And so with this, of course, we are creating a string. Next up, let's then specify the image here. Okay, so let's take a look at Compass again to check out what that cover image looks like. Okay, and so we have a property called image cover, and then in here we only have the name of the image itself, so not the path to the image, and so that we will actually have to manually specify. Okay, so but what matters here is that it's called image cover, and so let's get rid of all of this. Start by creating a template string, and then tour.image cover. And now we need to figure out the entire path to that image. Okay, and so as we already know, the image data is inside the public folder, so the folder from which all the static assets are going to be served. And so in here we have images, and then we have a folder, one for tours and one for users. Okay, and so inside of each of these tours, we then have the 3 pictures and 1 cover photo. So that's going to look something like this. And so the path here is image.tours or /tours and then / the name of the image. Great. So that should make our website look even better now. Oh yeah, now it's really starting to come to life. So that's fantastic. This makes me feel really great each time that it works. Anyway, let's now take care of the rest of the data, which of course still looks the same across all of these cards. Okay, and so let's now use the data in our collection to build this string here. So you see that this actually is a combination of different data. So we have the difficulty and the tour duration. And so let's here now create a template string. So basically assign this template string to this element. And so we start here with tour.difficulty. Remember, then the space, and then the tour duration. tour dot duration day tour. Okay, so that's the translation of this content. Then next up, what we have here is the tour summary. Okay, so equal tour dot summary. All right. Then next up, we have the start location. And so this tour, for example, starts in Banff, Canada. And so again, let's take a look at Compass here, just to see how the data looks like. Or actually, we don't need to always be switching back and forth to Compass. We can also just open up or import data here. So on the tours, we can simply use this data here instead of always going to Compass. So before we use the summary, now let's go ahead and use the start location, which is actually up here. So now we want start location dot description. Okay. So tour dot start location dot description. And so now you start to see why it made sense to actually create all of this different data that we created here, right? Next up, we're going to use the start dates. And so keep in mind that this is an array, okay? Because now what we want in our overview is basically the date where the next tour starts. So that's what this icon with the calendar here means in this case. So that's basically the first element of that start dates array. So start dates at position 0. Next up, we have this piece of data which says how many stops there are in these tours. And so basically that means how many locations we have. And so again, we're going to use the locations, and this time not start location, but really this locations. And so if we want to specify how many locations we have, well, then we need to count the length of this array. Okay, and so that's simple as well. So equal, and then set it to this template string, because we also want to add this stop. And so tour dot locations dot length stops. And finally, the amount of people that are part of each of the groups. So the people that can participate in one tour. And so that is stored at tour.max group size. Remember? And then people. Great. So that part is done now. And so let's actually go back to our website and test that out. And yeah, beautiful, at least almost beautiful, because this date looks kind of weird here. So we really just want June 2021. So we don't need to be all that specific here in this overview, okay? And so what we want this to look like is, again, June 2021. And so right now, it's all of this mess. And so let's fix that. And thankfully, that's actually very easy with JavaScript, which includes a couple of very nice functions to work with dates. And keep in mind that each of these start dates here really is a date object in our database. And so now we can use a function like this one, to local string. Okay, so basically it will convert this date into a nice readable string. And in here we can now pass an option for the language. And so that is English for US. And then also an object with some options. And so here we can now specify that we want the month to be long. So instead of just an abbreviation like we had here, so April and Aug, it will now print it out like this. So really the name of the entire month. Okay, and then also saying that the year should be numeric. And if you want to learn more about this function here, then just go ahead and Google that. Okay, so let's try that out again. And now it looks really nice. Awesome. So let's keep it moving and finish this last part here with the price and the rating details. And so that's down here in the cart footer. And so here, that's just the price. So equal to, well, let's actually leave it there, because now we still need a template string, because the price is not only this number, but actually we need an extra dollar sign here for the dollar price. So this one, right? Next up, we have the average rating here. So that's this. And so we already know that this is called tour.average rating. So we use that so many times, at least I believe. So let's just confirm it. So actually it's ratings average and then also ratings quantity. So let's just copy this. So ratings average. And now here we want the ratings quantity. All right, but of course this needs to be a template string. And then here set it to equal. And then of course interpolate the variable name in here. And now finally we need to build the URL to the detail page. Okay, so remember that when we click on one of the cards, it then takes us to the detail page. And so of course here we now need to specify that link, because of course that will depend on each tour. So we want the link to be /tours. And then remember how I mentioned before that for rendering these pages, we actually will want to query tours by their slug and not by their ID, how we did it in the API. Okay, because that actually makes the URL look a much nicer. Okay, and so let's use that here now. So tour.slug. And so just to explain you why we start this URL here with the slash, it is because building a URL like this, so starting only with the slash, is called a relative URL. And what this will do is that it will then add this piece of the URL after the host name. So that host is right now 127.0.0.1, but that is not necessary to specify here, because again, when writing a relative URL like this, it will then add what we have here to that host name. Okay, so let's reload that again. And so we're almost finished here. Not quite ready. So here you see undefined, and so we probably did something wrong there. And also you see that there is no space here between the price and the per person, and also here the same. Now, if you hover this button here, then down there in the left corner, so down here, you will see the URL that we just built. You can actually click it, and it will then give us this error, because of course we didn't define this route yet. But you see that it looks really nice here with the tours / the forest hiker, instead of having that ugly looking ID up there. Okay, but anyway, let's now fix this undefined and this missing space. So let's take a look at this one. Well, it looks correct actually. Ratings, quantity. Oh, but of course we're missing this tour dot. Okay, you probably were already seeing that one. Now about that missing space, there's something new that I need to show you about Pug, which is this so-called empty piped lane, or a line actually. So whenever we need a real space between two inline block elements, which are these bands, then we need to manually create that space using this piped line here, like this. Okay, and the same thing down here. Because otherwise, as we just saw, it will simply glue all of these elements then together. All right, so now all of that should be fixed. And that space is still not there. And that's actually because we forgot something. And so let's go back. And we actually need to manually add that empty space here and here. So this empty piped line here basically creates a space for us where we can then create content outside of an element. And so that's basically what this space is. So this space here that we just put here, so this empty space, it's content that's not inside of any of these two elements. And so again, in order to be able to do that, that's what we need this pipeline for. So these two pipelines. So try that again. And now indeed, here goes the space that we just created. Perfect. And with that, we actually wrap up this lecture and this stunningly looking first website, or part of the website, that we just built here together. So take a moment to appreciate how cool this really is, and also how all of this code that we wrote here together actually works. Okay, and then after that, come right back so that we can build together the tour overview page.